to make this kid's poncho, we're going to be using the all-in-one loom from Knitting Board. This has a total of 106 pegs, and it's great for when you want to use just one strand of worsted weight yarn, things that are typically like a 3 or 4 weight. This is a good loom to use for that. And again, if you haven't seen this one before, it's a little hard to get it fully into the frame because of how big it is, but there's 106 pegs total on this. We're only going to be using half the pegs, so we're going to be casting on 53 pegs to get the width that we want for this for the kids poncho. I want to take a minute and talk about the yarn I'm going to be using. It's a fun yarn. It's kind of got these little pieces of dippity-doos, whatever you want to call them, but it's actually a Burnett Dippity Dots yarn. I don't know if they still make it, but I'm sure they probably have something similar. And I have about 4 of these skeins, like these little skeins. They're only, I believe, let me see, where is it? It's an 8 gram, 208 ounces of that, approximately about 162 yards per skein. I've got 4 of them all ready to go like this. I do have, these are in a lavender, there's a slight purple look to it. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on camera. But I also have, if needed, I have a pink version, and that one is called a rose. And I also have a white version as well. So if I run out of these, I thought these would still look pretty good in the color scheme. Again, so we're going to use the all-in-one loom. So we're going to use half the pegs, and the first thing we're going to do is our normal E-wrap cast on, just to keep it simple. Then if you wind your yarn up with a yarn ball winder so that you have a center pull, it's a lot easier. So take the time to actually use a yarn ball winder to get them into these like cake things. It's a lot easier to pull from the center than having it be the other way and kind of flopping all around on you. So again, we're going to just E-wrap cast on. Figure out what you want to be your starting side. I usually like to use the side that has the little wing nut to remind me that that's the beginning, but I'm not working the round, so I don't need to worry about that. But I tend to start on the side that has this. I don't know why. I could start on the other side and not have anything in my way, but let me just draw a little slip knot. Oops, let's try that again. Okay. And then we're just going to place it on the first peg. We can weave this tail in later, or you can incorporate it right with it if you want to. So I'm actually going to hold both of them at once just to hide it. And I'm just going to go all the way over till I get, till I get half the pegs wrapped. Again, that's 53 pegs we'll be wrapping in E-wrap knit. And when I say half the pegs, because E-wrap knit is something pretty much everyone knows, that means we're going to go all the way over down, and we're going to do these pegs right here, only to this peg right here, and that'll give us our 53. So go ahead and wrap, then wrap it back and knit over for your E-wrap cast on, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, I already did it all the way back, so my E-wrap cast on is on. What we're going to do now to kind of help with the curling on the edge, the bottom part of the poncho, is we want to do the garter stitch, which means we typically do a row of knit, then a row of purl, then a row of knit, and then a row of purl. The garter stitch is typically worked over 4 rows. I am actually going to count this as my knit row, and so I'm going to go right into doing the purl stitch for the next, and then go back to knit, and then go back to purl. So again, if you're new to loom knitting, purling is where you simply take your hook, go through the loop, grab your working yarn, turn your loop, get your new loop, and then you put it back, take it off and put it back on the peg. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to do this garter stitch. Oops, get over there. Okay, and we're just purling it across. And make your new loop and put it back on the peg. So continue doing this purl stitch all the way to the end of the row, and then when you work your way back, you're going to knit in the E-wrap knit. And then you're going to go back and you're going to do another row of purl, because again, I'm counting my first row as my row of knit. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to finish purling the row I'm on, then I'm going to E-wrap knit, then I'm going to purl. So I already have that done. I'm going to repeat that twice. So I'm going to repeat my garter stitch steps twice. So I hope you can understand that. So again, do what we're doing here. Finish off your purl, E-wrap knit back, purl again, E-wrap back, and repeat that twice. And I apologize if you hear my cat meowing. We got a new cat. I hope it doesn't distract distract you guys, but he's very fuzzy. But yeah, so go ahead and do that, and then we'll be ready to move on to the more detail of the poncho. After finishing that last purl for the garter stitch, we're now just going to do one row of E-wrap knit to get back to the beginning. So again, just go ahead and wrap your pegs and then knit over until you get back to the beginning, and then we'll move on to the next little step. If you want with this type of loom, you can wrap some and then go ahead and work your way back over and knit over if you want. So you can kind of work it as you go. But yeah, just go ahead and E-wrap knit back to the beginning, and then we'll move on to the next stitch we're going to do. Once you get back to the beginning, now we're going to move on to the next process. Go ahead, if you haven't already, and push all the loops down. Again, just a little heads up, like I said before, we do have a new cat. I'm hoping he won't come downstairs and meow while I'm doing this. He's upstairs right now, but hopefully we can figure something out for when he's actually around. But anyhow, so we're back to the beginning, and we want to do what's called the drop stitch. Now with the drop stitch, it creates a really kind of cool effect, and it depends on how many times you rewrap a peg. I'm only going to be rewrapping the pegs once, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that you can definitely use the drop stitch to your advantage by how many times you rewrap the loom or the loops. But what we're going to do is, what we're also going to do is we're going to only do the drop stitches on the middle pegs. Our end pegs, like when I work to the end of this row, I'm going to knit, E-wrap knit the last peg. I'm not going to do the drop stitch on that. But to do the drop stitch, you're going to go ahead and you're going to knit the next peg. So you're going to knit it over. Then we're going to come in here and we're going to re-wrap that peg once, then move to the next peg, knit it over. Again, rewrap it once, move to the next peg, knit over, rewrap once, move to the next peg, knit over, rewrap it once, move to the next peg, knit over, rewrap it once, and move to the next. So continue this until you get to the second to the last peg, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. When you get close to the end, you're going to want to, you're going to want to make sure you only knit the last peg. So we have our knit over, rewrap, go to the next peg, wrap it, knit over, rewrap it, move to the next, wrap it, rewrap it, and then just go to this one and just finally just knit this last one over. Now what you're going to do, which is the fun part of the drop stitch, is you're going to go back through, let me see if I can get this up higher so you can see, you're going to go back through and you're going to remove the top loop on your pegs. So you're going to separate where the wrap is and where the, excuse me, let's see if I can get up here, where the E-wrap is. So you're just going to gently lift off that first loop. As gently as you can. You're going to work your way over, just removing the top loop off of all the pegs. If you need to, kind of push down the ones you've done, but you're just going to gently figure out the separation between the bottom loop and the top, and take that top loop off. And again, as you go, kind of push them down so that they don't kind of create a mess. But again, we're just going through and we're taking that top loop and we're taking it off. Again, as you go, just kind of push down the ones you've done just to get them out of your way. And separate, take off. So go ahead and continue this to the last peg, and then we'll move on to the next part. And as we're getting back, like I said, I'm just finishing up getting those last loops, top loops off the pegs. Okay, when you get the last one done, go ahead and push these down, go back to where you started, and just do a row of E-wrap knit. So again, just wrap your pegs and knit over. Again, we're trying to keep this pretty simple, so if this is your first time making a kid's poncho, I want it to be something doable. So again, as you're working, if you want to, you can obviously, knit over as you go. And continue the E-wrap knit to the back to the start of the loom. Finishing up the row of E-wrap knit right now. And go ahead and push those down. And there's a little peek at what you're going to be seeing. As you can see, it gets a little more open there. It's not going to be fully seen until obviously you work it down more, but we have our garter stitch here, which is helping with the curling. And if you look really closely, you can see the drop stitch is giving us that more open pattern for the kids' poncho. So what we're going to do now is we're going to count doing a row of drop stitch and a row of E-wrap as one set. And you're going to complete this many sets until we get closer to where we're going to be creating the hole for the head to go through. So again, count a row of drop stitch, a row of E-wrap knit as one set, and complete this many sets until we get closer to, like I said, where we're going to put the neck hole, because we'll be doing things a little differently as we get closer to there. After completing the 18 sets of where you did a row of drop stitch and then a row of E-wrap knit, your product should be coming through nicely. And again, it's a very lightweight material. You can see my hand through it. And we have our cute little garter stitch on the end. And we're now going to we're just going to switch over to E-wrap knit. And we're going to E-wrap knit for this many rows until we're ready to bind off our pegs in order to make the neck hole of this poncho sweater type thing. So again, go ahead and you're going to do E-wrap knit for the amount of rows I mentioned, and then we'll come back and we'll bind off our pegs to make the neck hole. After completing the 22 rows of E-wrap knit, we're ready to bind off some of the pegs in order to make the neck hole for the poncho. Now what I had to do is I first had to find my center. Given the fact that I had 53 pegs, I could find my center pretty easily, and then I worked my way out from there. So it ended up working out for this one that I started placing pegs on peg number 17. This is the start, so I counted over 17 and I placed my first peg, and then I ended up placing a total of 21 stitch markers all the way across to make my hole. And you want to make sure you have your yarn, and what we're going to do is we're going to bind these off doing the crochet bind off. And what's great is you can alternate this. If this ends up being too big of a hole for your child's head, when you make a new one you can adjust it by using less pegs, obviously. If it is too big for your child, depending again on their size and that, you can easily kind of stitch close and bring the gap in at the end when you're all done. So there is ways to kind of modify making the neck hole smaller if you need to when you're done. So again, we're going to bind off these pegs. It means we got to work our way over to them and then bind them off. So what I'm going to do real quickly is go off camera and I'm going to E-wrap knit, just regular E-wrap knit, until I get to peg 16, just before I'm ready to do my binding off. Okay, we're getting close to the peg that we need to bind off, so make sure you got your yarn ready. Give yourself a little bit of slack of the yarn so you don't have to pull on it too much. And again, I know it's a little hard to see. I didn't have my other color, enough of my other color stitch markers, but I have my yellow stick markers, and what you can do as you're binding off, obviously, is you're going to take these off as you go. And the first thing you're going to do is, when I'm peg 16, we're going to wrap it, E-wrap knit like normal. I just want to make sure my yarn's not caught. I'm going to knit it over. Now I'm going to start binding off these pegs. So I'm going to come in here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to wrap the peg once, knit it over, wrap it a second time, knit it over. Now bring this loop onto the next peg, and you can remove this stitch marker because you're not going to need it anymore. Now we're going to do the same thing on this peg. We're going to knit over that, knit it over again. Okay, and then we're going to move it over to the next peg. So it's our traditional crochet bind off with 2 pegs in between, and as you're going you can just kind of move those stitch markers you no longer need out of your way. So we knit it over, we do 1, knit it over, wrap again, move it over. Okay, I'm not going to worry about removing the stitch markers right now, so we're going to knit that to lock it in, do 1, 2, and move it over, lock it in, do it once, twice, move it over. Now I'm going to continue this off camera real quick until I get to almost to the end, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what you do when you start hitting no more of these stitch markers. The last little bit of pegs. I'm getting ready to move this over to the final one, or the final couple that we have to do. Again, you knit it over, rewrap it once, rewrap it twice, move it over, knit it over, rewrap it once, rewrap it twice, and then move it over to this peg and knit that over so it locks it in. Now what you've done is you've bound off those pegs, so that will end up being our neck hole, because we'll be doing something else in a minute here. You move all your stitch markers so they're out of your way. So again, if you're looking at it this way, we've created part of the hole. Now what you're going to do is you're going to continue e-wrapping knit to the end. I'm just going to lock it in place over here. Okay. Come back and knit these over. Okay, so what you're going to do, get everything out of my way, is you're going to, let me fix this for 1 second. To work this now, again, we have this bounded off, but what we need to do now is we need to work each part of it, would be the shoulder, these parts, a little bit on their own before we actually go ahead and recast on these pegs that we had bounded off. So what we're going to do for now, since our working yarn's over here, we're just going to work these two pegs right in here, and we're going to do this amount of rows in order to get this little gap. So again, we want to make sure that it's going to fit over the head with this, so we need to add it. You may need to adjust it depending on the person later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to still keep it e-wrap knit, and I'm just going to work this side for a little bit, and then we're going to repeat that same amount of rows on the other side. So you're going to want to make sure you have at least 2 skeins of this. I'm just slowly getting done with the first skein, so this gives you an idea that you should be able to make this project with probably at least 2 to 3 of this kind of skein if they're the same size. But again, so we're going to take this yarn and we're just going to work these pegs that are left over on this side, not going past this one, just these right here. And again, we're going to do, excuse me, this many rows until we get this side done, and then I'll move over to the other. So I'm going to quickly e-wrap that many rows and show you what it looks like. After completing the 20 rows, it should start looking like this, where you see the one side is dropping down, and now we have to work that same 20 stitches from there onto this side. But again, we're not going to do anything with these pegs yet. So you have 2 choices. You can either cut your string here on the yarn you're using, or you can start a new skein on the other side for the 20 rows, and then join these when you go to empty off or cast on the pegs that are empty. So I'm actually going to leave this alone. I'm going to leave what I have over here alone, and I'm going to start a new skein just because I am getting low on this, that I might as well start a new one, and then that way I can use this one to finish up the project. Just a little heads up. So leave it like it is. You can still leave it attached until we get ready to work on this side again. So we're just going to go over here with our new skein of yarn, and we're just going to cast on these 16 pegs and do 20 rows of e-wrap knit. So you're going to do the same thing like as if you were still starting a project. You could start your new skein, or like I said, you could cut from the old and bring it over and do 20 here and then do the whole thing at once. But again, I'm just going to start a new one, and I'm going to make sure this is loose. I'm just going to do my slip knot, and I'm just going to place it right back on the first peg, and I can weave the tail in just like I would normally. Oops. Try that again here. So I'm just going to cast this on like I normally would, tightening it up, taking the working yarn, and I'm just going to wrap the 16 pegs, and this is going to count as one. You can hold the 2 strands together if you want to lock them in place, but I'm just going to work over to the 16 pegs, to the 16th peg, sorry, and I'm going to work back and forth again until I get 20 rows done. So I'm going to lock that in place. So that's all I'm going to do now. Now I'm only focusing on this side, just like I did over here on this side. Now I need to do the 20 rows on this before we work the whole side again. So go ahead and do, this will be counted as 1 row, do 20 rows on this side now. Okay, I went ahead and did the 20 rows on this side. So again, you see we got our neck hole created here, and now what we need to do is to cast on and start using these stitches again in order to continue going back to making the flat panel like we were doing here. And what we're going to do for the rest of the project, again, I wanted to kind of keep it simple. I wanted the front to have a little more of an openness to it, and the back to have a little more of a closer knit, which is just going to be the E-wrap knit, which is how it kind of looks like up here. So again, we're just going to do straight E-wrap for the rest of the project for that many rows before we're ready to bind this off. So what we need to do now is we're going to use the yarn that I started over here, and I'm going to work my way over, wrapping all the pegs, knitting over wherever there's 2 loops, and when I get over here to my other straggler, I'm going to tie this to the working yarn I'm using. So go ahead and take the yarn that you have started over here, and all you're going to do is wrap over all the way to the other side, knitting over where you can. You'll be able to knit over here, but again, you're going to wrap these, and we'll work our way all the way over to the other side. Again, you're just wrapping those pegs, and then when you work your way back through, you'll be able to knit them over because you'll be going back through. So again, we're getting to those last stitches over here. Okay, it's always hard to show the side, but I'm just wrapping over to the last peg over here. I'm going to wrap the last one. Now again, I have my skein from the time I did that side, but I'm going to knit this over for right now to lock it in place. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go back through, and I'm going to knit over all these pegs that I can. Again, just working my way to any one that has the 2 loops on it. Okay, and that's all I can do, so I just go over here and I finish up the ones on this side. Okay, and the last one. So now I want to go back over here, and like I said, excuse me, I'm going to take these 2 and I'm going to tie them together. So I'm going to take this one, because again, this one only had a little left. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to be done with that one for now, and then I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 and tie them together. So I can use them as one, because I don't need to use 2 strands of yarn. I'm just tying them together. And if you want to, you can trim this now, or you can trim it later, but I think I should be okay to trim it now. It's got our own little knot. And now we're going to use this as one, and you're just going to push all these down, and you're just going to do E-wrap knit. And now when you go back through, you'll be able to knit over these, because you'll have your 2 strands on it. So again, you're just going to continue E-wrap knit for the rest of the project until we're ready to cast it off, and you're going to E-wrap knit for that many rows right there, and then we'll be ready to take it off. Okay guys, after doing your 100 rows of E-wrap knit and your 2 sets of garter stitch set that we did, your project will definitely be almost ready to come off the loom. Again, we just kept the back of this project as garter stitch, as E-wrap knit, and then we switched over and did the garter stitch for a little bit. I forgot to mention that before, so I wanted to just make sure to remind you that do your 100 rows, then do your 2 sets of garter stitch, and you'll probably be ending over here. You may end at the other side in case I accidentally miss clicking a row, but if you don't want to start on this side, depending on whether you work better left to right or right to left, you can always do another row of E-wrap knit if you would rather start at a different side. Now what we're going to do for the cast off is just the normal kind of crochet cast off. So I'm going to show you it a little bit and then I'll go off camera until we get to the last couple rows. So again, with doing the crochet bind off, it's a little tricky to show when you're on the same side, but we're going to just do knit over once, knit over twice, let's see, I just get that around, there we go, knit it over, and then you move it over to the next peg, move it over, then again you do the same thing, you knit it over, re-wrap it once, making sure you only get the one loop over there, re-wrap it twice, and then move it over. So you're going to continue this process until you get to the end. So again, you see we got 2 here. We're just going to simply, like I said, knit it over, re-wrap it once, re-wrap it twice, and then move it over to the next peg. Continue this until you get to the end of the project, and then we'll take it off completely. We're on our last couple pegs here. I just moved this one over, so I need to knit it over, and then I need to do my 2 chains again. So you re-wrap it once, re-wrap it twice, and then we move it on to the final peg. Knit it over. Now cut yourself a working tail. Oops, excuse me. Cut yourself a working tail. Grab yourself your crochet hook and place that loop on the crochet hook. And then just get rid of the loom away from it. Now you got your loop on the, still got your loop on the project. Give myself a little slack here, and then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to crochet 1 through it. Pull that all the way through. It's going to be a little different because of the type of yarn this is. Those little dot things can tend to get stuck. Okay, so we want to pull it through. Okay, and pull it, and then go ahead and make a knot in it to secure it. And if you want, you can work this tail along the side, not the bottom, but you can work it along the side of the project if you want to leave it in. So you would just go through and you would just kind of grab it, kind of work it through if you wanted to kind of hide it into the project. You'd work your way up the side a little bit to get it kind of worked in. If you want to, you can also do another knot on the side, which means you would pull it through part of the way, and then you would just kind of tie it. Just another way to secure it. And I always like to do 2 knots if I can. And then you can just take your scissors and you would trim that out and it wouldn't be as noticeable. So that's how we bind off this project. And now you have the choice of adding fringe to this project or not, and the way that you would close it off could be different too. You may decide to tie the sides. I'm going to show you a couple pictures. I'm going to show it to you on my daughter so you can see what I mean by the different options you have. for the project. So let me go get my daughter and we will show you what this looks like. Okay guys, the poncho is done. As you can tell, this wasn't originally designed for my daughter. It was going to be designed for a younger kid, but I kind of made it a little too big. But anyhow, it comes to about here on her. She's wearing kind of a long shirt, but it's almost to where her pants would be. But what you can do if you want is either you can add in more of these rows, or you can add, what I might do on this is add some fringe to it to give me the length I want in the front. Now let's stand to the side. And as you can see, the back, I wanted it to be longer than the front. And what you can also do is you can decide how much you want to close this off. Some might choose only to maybe tack it to the bottom and keep a very open arm, or you can kind of measure what you need for your child to decide how closed off you want it to be. And there's two ways you can do it. You can sew it closed, you know, with the yarn and sew it, or what I'm thinking of doing is just taking regular yarn and almost lacing it like you would a pair of sneakers, and then tying a bow on the bottom. That way, whatever shirt your child is wearing underneath will kind of peek through and give it a little more design. But again, it's got some room to it. I mean, you can stretch it some. So like, she's 11 years old. She's around, what, 80 pounds?
Yes.
And as you can tell, she's almost my height, so she's under 5 feet tall. But again, you have extra to maneuver on the side. You can easily add in more stitches anywhere to get the length where you want it in the front. And again, I just added more length in the back, and it kind of hits past where her pants would be in the back. And again, you can add fringe on the side as well. So just, I thought this was a cute little simple idea for summer. Be great over top of like a tank top, or even a different color shirt. She's just wearing whatever she had on for the day. But again, I'm going to add some fringe to the bottoms just to give it a little more detail. For those of you that don't know how to add fringe to a project, I do have a video that shows it, but I'll do a really quick thing at the end of this one. I figured I'd better do a little quick thing on the end to show you how to do it. The first thing is figure out which color yarn you want. I thought this lavender purple would be a good complementary color to it. And then the next thing you want to do is figure out how long you want to make it. How long do you want your fringe? The idea too is you would take a piece of the yarn, obviously you'd fold it in half, and that's going to tell you how long it is. Like, do you want it to be a 6-inch long fringe? Do you want it to be longer than that? A lot of times I say make them longer because you can always trim it later. So I just decided I would use kind of like my crochet hook as a guide, and I would go a little ways past, maybe I would do 2 crochet hooks worth, or maybe 7 or 8 inches. I mean, really it's going to be whatever you want. However long you decide to make the fringe, then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to cut it. And then you're going to try to line up the next yarn with that string so that you get them as long, as evenly as you can by lining them up and then snipping it. Bringing the yarn over again, lining it up, snipping it, and deciding how many pieces of fringe you want in each hole, basically. So I'm going to go over one more time because I want to have an extra piece available to me. So I'm going to go over one more time. And then what I'm going to do, when I'm ready for it to actually be put into the project, which is really simple to do, I'm going to get one more here because, and you can decide whether you want 3 or 4 pieces of yarn each time. I'm keeping this one out so that I remember how long I made them for making more. Then I'm taking this and I'm kind of looping it. I'm grabbing my crochet hook and then I'm deciding where to put it. Again, I was going to work the front first. So if you look, I've got my edge, and you're going to start on the end. And what you're going to do in order to add your thing is go into the project, grab your fringe that you want, all the pieces, bring it through, and then what you're going to do is you got this loop. Go ahead and reach in and grab the yarn from the other side and then give it a tug. And that's simply how you add the fringe along the bottom. And again, make it a little longer than you think, or even make them multi-different sizes. Like I said, these don't all line up, but I can easily trim them down to the length I want when I'm all done going all the way across. So once you get all the way done going across, lay it flat on a table, and then you can take your scissors and you can trim it to make sure they all line up. But that's simply how you add fringe. You just kind of figure out what spots you want, if you want to go through each loop and put them in, decide how many pieces of string you want coming through, because again, if we're using 3, we're actually getting, you know, more like 6 strands. So just think of that, and then just go ahead and add all the way across the front if you want, and go ahead and add it all the way across the back if you want. Doing it the same way, having the project facing you, the outer side, and then putting the fringe through like we did. So I hope that helps, and have a great day, everyone.